What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Clippers Latest, where we talk all things LA Clippers, quick, fast, and to the point. I'm your host with the most, Brandon Goggins, back here with another episode for you guys today. This episode is brought to you by Kalshi. So big shout out to them as always for sponsoring this video. Make sure you download the Kalshi app today. Use promo code FANOrangeBasketball to get $10 when you trade your first 10. Look, guys, how are we doing? How are we feeling? Honestly, are we feeling good? Are we feeling bad? Are we feeling somewhere in between? Are we feeling like we don't know how we're feeling? You know, it's okay to feel all of those things, because I feel all of those things. Like, well, I'm not feeling bad. I'm not feeling bad, but I'm just kind of like everywhere right now, because if you haven't, checked in, or if you haven't read the bottom text on the screen, the Los Angeles Clippers have officially made their pick. Clippers used their 5th overall pick in the NBA draft to select Illinois guard Keaton Waggler, making him one of the highest drafted players in franchise history. And I hate to be that guy, but what did I tell y'all? What did I try to tell y'all? You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all tried to call me crazy. Not all of you, but some of y'all tried to call me crazy when I said that this was going to be the most likely pick. I knew that they were going to pick the most likely pick and prioritize fit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I figured that that's probably what was going to happen. There aren't going to be all these NBA experts putting all these mock drafts and all these analyses and evaluations and, just everybody putting Keaton Waggler if there's not even a sliver of a chance of it being Keaton Waggler. You know what I mean? That was the most likely pick that's been the most likely pick for the past few months. And there are arguments to be made. But coming into the night, most of the attention was focused on AJ DeBansta, Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer, Caleb Wilson. We already knew that those 4 were going to be off the board. So when the Clippers got on the clock, they stuck to their guns and took Waggler 5th overall, like everybody probably assumed that they would. And, it's a pick that I feel like can change the direction of the franchise. I mean, for the last few years, we've been trying to balance winning now with building for the future. And, I feel like the front office, identifying a player that they believe can eventually become one of the faces of the organization is a massive responsibility. And I think that Waggler can eventually step into those shoes, maybe not right out the gate, but the good news is he's entering a situation where he won't have to carry everything on day one. He's going to have Darius Garland to help him create the offense. He's going to have Ben Mathurin to take some of the scoring burden. He's going to have a veteran like Kawhi Leonard around him to remain part of his next chapter, or at least, just for a little bit. And he can, learn from him. I don't hate the pick at all. I think that he can be an impact player from day one. I mean, we had rookies last season that were picked much later in the draft that had way bigger impacts than we thought that we would, or thought they would. So I feel like having the number 5 overall pick, I don't want to be like the guy that has the famous last words, but how bad could it be? I don't want everybody to just over stress about this situation and feel like this was a miss, because that's what I'm seeing some people say. I feel like we shouldn't give that evaluation until we're given a reason to have that opinion. And right now, we don't have a reason to. So let's hope for the best, Even if we don't think that he was the best player available, I know that, some people feel that way, but I still feel like the pick makes sense, and I think that we can make something work with it. But now the question is simple, who is Keaton Waggler? What are we getting? What makes Keaton Waggler special? And if you ask people who love Keaton Waggler, they see a future superstar. I mean, Yahoo Sports, they described him as one of the more interesting upside players in the entire draft, where, as a freshman at Illinois, he averaged almost 18 points per game, 5 rebounds, 4.2 assists, while shooting almost 40% from the 3. Those are some numbers that jump off the page. But, what really stands out is how he scores. He's not some explosive above the rim athlete. We've talked about it before. He didn't have a single dunk last season. He doesn't blow by people with pure speed, but instead, he's somebody that can play with pace, control, and feel, get to his spots, create separation, knock down tough shots, make offense look easy for him. And I think that's what's really going to help him excel in the league, because some people get out and go too fast and don't understand the pacing of the game. He's a smart player, and I think that is a big reason why so many scouts believe that his game will translate to the NBA, And I'm one of those people that think that it can translate to the NBA. Now, there are concerns, he doesn't have like a crazy wingspan, despite him being 6'6", his arms aren't the longest. So passing lanes, he'll have to be a little more active, as far as lateral movement goes. And, we've talked about it. He's not naturally considered a great athlete, but, you know, I feel like there are things that he can do that outweigh that. Also, there are questions about his defensive impact and, that he'll provide against bigger and stronger NBA players, which, is a fair concern, but that's the gamble that the Clippers are making. And they're betting that elite skill, elite shooting, elite offensive feel will, matter more than some of the physical limitations. And those are things that we can work on, And if they're right, they may have just found the offensive centerpiece of the next era. The NBA draft is here, and Kalshi users did not expect many fireworks at the top of the board. And on Kalshi, you can trade whether a top 10 pick would be traded during the draft. And as draft night unfolded, at least in the first round, the market continued to trend toward no, with traders giving it just a 6% chance that a top 10 pick would be moved. And that meant that $100 trade on yes would have paid out to about $1,500, $1,563, to be exact, if that deal had happened. But all 10 picks stayed with their original teams, and the market closed out exactly as traders expected. So fairs. But you never know what could happen, because anything, there are still free agents out there, and picks still could be traded. So never say never. But on Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning that there is no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in or out of your position. So for a limited time, make sure you download the Kalshi app today. Use promo code FanArtsBasketball to get $10 when you trade your first 10. Again, that is on KALSHI, Kalshi, trade on anything. Now, here's the part that I feel like should have Clippers fans smiling, because Keaton Waggler, he's not just a top 5 pick. He is part of the return for the Ivica Zubac trade that took place earlier this year. And I want you guys to let that sink in. At the trade deadline, Clippers made the very controversial decision to move their starting center, to Indiana. And, at the time, many people questioned whether the return would even be worth it. People were hesitant about Benedict Mathurin, Ijax, what the pick would even be, because we weren't guaranteed to get Indiana's pick. But fast forward to today, Clippers have Benedict Mathurin, who I think can be an incredible player. We still have additional future assets coming our way, and we've added the 5th overall pick in the NBA draft, and that became Keaton Waggler, who I think has a very solid future destined ahead for him in the NBA. So when you look at the total package, the deal, it continues to age better and better for Los Angeles. Like I said, Mathurin, I think he has star potential. Waggler could become a franchise building block and becoming something special. And the Clippers, they're not finished collecting the value that is from the deal. And I think that's why some people are starting to view this as, one of the more important moves of the Lawrence Frank era, because we didn't just trade a center, but we completely, maybe not completely, but we made a really massive step to reinventing and resetting our future. So I feel like it is a good move. I feel like, I don't want to say that we fleeced, because we, like I said earlier, we don't know what Keaton Waggler is going to produce, but I would like to think that we got a pretty decent deal. I feel like we did pretty well with it. And yeah, I mean, like, I have no regrets. I miss Zoo dearly, and I always wish him the best, but, Zoo was, you got your prime. He was on that falling action, if you ever remember from the English class, where you had your exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and then resolution. If you remember that chart from when you used to go over the plot, or maybe I'm just an English nerd and, I'm the only one that remembers that, but hopefully somebody else gets that reference out there. But I felt like Zoo was on the falling action. He was still producing, but how much time did we really have left? I feel like we pulled the trigger when we needed to, and, I think that it worked out in our favor, but time will tell. But I think that is that's how I feel about that. Now, speaking of trades that aged well, let's talk about a trade that did not age well. But after 7 long years, the Paul George trade is officially behind us. Can we get a round of applause for that? Yeah. Yeah. On Tuesday night, the Oklahoma City Thunder used the final asset from the Paul George deal, the 12th overall pick, that is, on Adai Mara from Michigan, the 7'3" guy that we have talked about. He was a prospect that many people believe could be an interesting target for the Clippers. He was a wild card for that number 5 spot. Some people thought he could go as high as 5. Some people thought he could fall as low as the 20s, but he ended up going number 12. And yes, it is a little bit painful, watching yet another piece of that trade go to the hands of Oklahoma City Thunder. The rich get richer. I mean, they don't need him, but they got him, and he's probably going to do well there. But, honestly, the bigger story of it all is that the trade is finally done. No more pick obligations, no more draft night reminders, no more checking to see what Oklahoma City is doing with the Clippers' latest asset. The final Band-Aid has finally been ripped off, and, look, I'm not here to argue that the Thunder didn't win the deal. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander became a 2-time MVP, Finals MVP, champion, whatever. Jalen Williams became an All-NBA player. OKC won a championship. They absolutely maximized the value that they received. But what's done is done. For the first time in 7 years, the Clippers can finally stop looking back and finally look forward. The focus is not on Shai, on Jalen Williams, not on Adai Mara. It's on Darius Garland, Benedict Mathurin, Keaton Waggler, and whoever else we add. And, whether this new core can deliver the next great era of Clippers basketball, that Paul George era is finally over, and now the new chapter begins. And it'll continue tonight, but I do not think I will be able to record because I had some prior obligations. So we will be getting night 2 reactions on Friday. Yeah, Friday, I think. For when you guys will see it. Record Thursday. You guys picking up what I'm putting down, you know what I mean? So I do apologize for that, but, things happen. These next couple of weeks, I'm going to give you guys a heads up. They're going to be scattered all over the place, so please bear with me. But I did want to make sure that we covered the draft tonight or last night because, we have been talking about it for so much time. And, it finally happened, finally here. We talked about Keaton Waggler all that time, and he is finally a member of the Los Angeles Clippers. If you want to, go see some stuff about Keaton Waggler, he was able to get some posts up on the Los Angeles Clippers social. He said that he's ready to rock and roll, ready to go. So I like the energy, and I'm excited for him. I think he's going to be a dog, and I think he's going to get after it. And, we'll see what he can do. But that is going to do it for this episode of the Clippers Latest. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, rocking with me. This finally embarks a new journey, the start of a new season. So, let's get to it. And, Let's do it. Let's get to it. But like I said, that's gonna do it. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below about everything that we talked about today. How are you feeling about the draft pick? Do you think that we made the right decision? How do you feel about it? What are your expectations for Keaton Waggler? Leave all your thoughts down below. And while you're at it, make sure you hit that like button and consider subscribing if you are new. And if you haven't already, you know what I mean? We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers, so I would appreciate you guys if you join along for the ride. Came over here and joined Clip Gang, because if you ain't Clip Gang, don't bang. You know what I mean? But, nah, that's going to do it. I'm going to get on up out of here, y'all. Y'all be easy. Y'all stay sleazy. And as always, keep your capital P. I'm going to catch y'all in the next one. Y'all be smooth. Peace.